Right, well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining me. Talk about how to improve your sales skills. And normal sort of rules apply if you don't mind. Be kind enough to acknowledge the fact that we are recording this. So if you have your video on, there's a good chance you might end up on as part of the recording. So I have to say, if you prefer to remain anonymous, that's perfectly acceptable. So please feel free to hide yourselves appropriately. If not, I'd be delighted to see you. Otherwise, I end up sitting here looking at the wall. I'd like to see your face. Can I give a quick wave to Ray? We've got a video on, so that's great. Yeah, you will get tomorrow afternoon, whether you like it or not. You're going to get a copy of the slides. Hey! And you'll also in the future get a link where you can watch this again. Can you believe it? You can watch this again. Oh my goodness. Well, what could a man ask for? And then obviously I'll talk that if you like some bespoke help for your company, we have also one-to-ones. Please feel free to use the chat line. Yeah, that's perfectly acceptable. If you have any questions or anything like that, you'd like to say anything, feel free to use the chat line. No problem at all. As always, you know, for those of you who have survived the Tuesday session before, we always start with a quiz and the normal prize, which nobody has yet to win, a night out with me in Hull. And the second prize, naturally, as we always say, is 2 nights. So if you've got yourselves at the ready, let's start this. Obviously, you kind of have to, I think everyone's muted their microphones. So we'll go into this, how to improve your sales skills. So here we go. Let's start with a little quiz. Who fancies a little quiz? So, right. Number 1, here we go. It's an easy one, this one. On average, it's American currency, but there we go. On average, how many dollars per year do businesses save per each remote employee? Yeah, there we go. This survey was done only in the last week. Did anyone know the answer to that one? You've got the choice. Can't phone a friend, no cheating. Here we go. Answer is, you can click the button, it'd help. $11,000. It's about 10 ballpark, circa £9,500. So there we go. Next question is a good one. 77 remote employees say they're more productive when working from home. Well, you've got 50-50, and the answer is true. Now, I don't know if that applies to you, but a moment's thought as to whether you're more productive at home or how many of you are drawn to watching something on the telly or going gardening or whatever. But it's interesting to see 3/4 of people seem to think they're more productive. Next on the list, next one. Oh, here's a good one for you. You know, we are green here. You know, how many tons of carbon emissions are reduced thanks to remote work? Not sure how they arrived at the answer for this one, but it is. The answer is D. So yeah, there are some obvious benefits to working from remotely. This is my favourite question. Here we go. I'll read this slowly. What percentage of participants on a conference call are less likely to multitask with their camera on? Confession time. What percentage are less likely to multitask? You know the answer to that one? Yeah, I thought you would. 82%. Because don't forget, yes, I am. So yeah, interesting that I'm not affronted, of course. I'm just being light-hearted. But there we go. And finally, today is only 5 questions this week. 79% of people said they're more likely to buy from brands that have behaved well during the coronavirus crisis. True or false? It is true. But interesting enough, a survey there only done in the last few days about sort of a behaviour during the pandemic. Actually, I shouldn't say, you know, during the pandemic. It'll be around for a wee while. So about how immediate reactions in terms of remote working, which obviously will be a theme that's running through today's presentation. So you're thinking, what is that slide doing on the screen? I know, some of you thinking that. You've got to listen to this old bloke next 40 minutes talk about sales. And he's put a picture of a roofing contractor up on the screen. Well, he's gone a bit off. I'm going to tell you a personal story. Is that allowed? Yes, it is. Of course, it's allowed on a Tuesday. We can do that. I started my career working in the roofing industry. And the story was that my first day working for the company. You can all remember, can't we, our first car we got? Well, there you are. That's the car I got. Well, and they're the keys. That was the first day in sales working for this company. And I sat down and I was given me keys, a car. I was given a notepad, a yellow pages, and said, right, what we want you to, I can't do the accent, in Lancashire. I'm not very good at accents. I was in Lancashire, Wigan it was. And it's, go out lad, visit a load of building sites, come back, tell me if you've got any sales, what roof tiles are using, where they're buying them from, see if you can sell them. Off you go. I worked for this company for about 3 hours before I drove down to W.H. Smith's and bought myself an A to Z of Manchester. And there I did. I drove round looking for building sites to go and talk to people. I tell you what, I learned more about sales in those first few weeks than I ever did. A very old-fashioned, very traditional approach. But by golly, it was ever the school of hard knocks. And it'll be a constant theme that runs through this because, in effect, the sales process hasn't changed a great deal. And the sales skills I'll talk about today haven't changed. What has changed has been naturally technology and the sophistication of buyers. So, which leads on to my next thing. What is this? He says. What's going on in the screen in front of us? He's put a picture of an overgrown hedge and a riot. Now, where is this heading? Well, this has only happened in the last week. I'm going to tell you 2 small stories about 2 particular situations that are sales related. Let's start with the hedge. I wasn't going to put a picture up on the screen of my own hedge. But the story began was I wanted to have my own hedge sorted out in my own house. Need to say, that is not mine. So what did I do? I got into my little on the doorstep and I rang up 2 people to come to the house. So the first one came and he knocked on the door and he very kindly stood a few meters away and chatted. We walked around the garden together and he said he would come back to me with a quotation. The second guy came the following day and he did a similar thing. He came to the door, he knocked on it, showed respectfulness in terms of social distancing. We walked around the garden. Okay, so 2 very similar sales interactions, and this was last week. The first guy I've yet to hear from. The second one, his wife, I assume it's his wife, his partner, drove up to the house the following day and put an envelope through my door, and inside the envelope was a typed out quotation relating to how much it's going to cost me to have my trees done. And the following day, he rang me up on the number which he had asked for, and he asked me about his quotation. No, so it wouldn't matter to me a jot if the first guy came back and he was a third of the price, half of the price. I found the person I want to deal with. He did the classic sales thing. He listened to the customer's needs. He provided great customer service, and he followed up. He is going to be doing my work, and I would have no hesitation in even recommending, he hasn't even started the work yet, there's a snapshot of sales and customer service and sales skills which will run through our presentation. I'm just going to say one thing. welcome to anyone this afternoon who's just joined us. So you're joining and thinking there's a picture of a tree on the screen and this bloke is going on a bit. Right, here we go. He's going to go on even further now because he's going to talk about this. That was going to be hopefully the outcome. I'll have a whale of a time with that in the garden. Right, next thing. What is this happening here? Well, there's a company I'm working with who makes equipment for the police. They make all public order or riot equipment, and what they've done is adapt the equipment, making face shields. But the face shields are different in the sense that they've got antimicrobial, antibacterial properties on, so no virus can stick to them. So they've got a unique benefit. And I was with the company last week, and we did something very unusual. I thought it was very clever. What we did something disruptive. The entire workforce, the company, put on a face shield, and we went into the local town. And we stood there and went and visited local businesses and talked to consumers about their fears relating to wearing face coverings and about the obvious benefits of wearing the mask or the covering. It was classic old-fashioned sales, and we sold out. Lots of people were buying the product there and then. We were able to take credit cards. We took the product to the customer. We talked to them. Now, those are very 18th, 19th, 20th century techniques. It's an integral part of doing sales. We identified our customers and went out to see them. That was one situation, and the hedge story was very similar. It was customer service related activity. There was no technology involved. It was old-fashioned, traditional, meeting customers, sales skills, understanding needs, and closing the sale, which we'll talk about today. So there we go. A few stories there, because one of the biggest issues with both stories is that I think a lot of the things that people sometimes are very reluctant to make a sales visit, sales call, sales transaction, because often a lot of companies I speak to, the issue is of confidence, and they face that particular challenge. I can't do it. I hate it, they say. I hate making phone calls. I hate going to see people. Issue. And that's the issue about what's the worst thing that can happen. I think that's often a great challenge that many businesses I've encountered face. So these are 4 E's, 4 personal qualities that are often identified in terms of what makes a good sales person or a business person who is good at sales. And you'll probably reflect the fact on the good sales experiences you've had and the less ones. If people are polite, professional, personable, and perseverant. It's hard to say if you've had a bit to drink. Polite, professional, personable, and show perseverance. There are 4 characteristics. If you have those, you're a long way forward. Right. You've probably seen this slide 1,000 times, and it's probably the most telling I've got. This is particularly focused on business-to-business sales. 8% of sales require X number of follow-up calls, and 44% of people give up after 1 follow-up. And the answers are 5. Generally speaking, in a business-to-business sales scenario, you'll need to follow up meetings and follow up at least 5 times. And the majority of people give up. So, for example, in my tree scenario or in other situations, 1 call often isn't enough, and trying to get hold of buyers and following things through. That's the issue about persistence. Caveat, though, Simon's caveat. There's also the scenario that a lot of people say to me, well, hang on a second, I don't want to be a nuisance, don't be a pest, don't stalk anybody. Perfectly understandable. There also is a time in where you may choose to practically withdraw, or as we say in Yorkshire, give up. You've got to think about, is it worth it, all that effort? But nothing wrong with being persistent. Right, sales and marketing. Let's talk about this. What's the difference between sales and marketing? Can have a little silence moment while you ponder the answer to that question. Well, I think the answer is this. They've been promoted as well, haven't they? Gosh, I've had nothing else but Leeds United last week. Marketing crosses the ball, and sales puts it into the net. Invariably, the process is that you'll generate demand through marketing activities, and sales, in effect, is closing the deal. So, for example, if somebody owns a shop, people walk in the door, and then it's a sales process. Someone makes a phone call to a business, and then it becomes a sales process. So think of it very much that way, that you are trying to generate demand and then close demand. Right, here we go. Fast pace this afternoon. Are you sitting comfortably? Right, let's crack on. Sales opportunities, how to find them. It's often the question I'm asked the most. Well, times are tough. What to find sales opportunities? Well, I'll give you a few little tips before we. Two ways of doing it. Spoken about this in previous webinars. You've got outbound and inbound marketing. So outbound is going out and being pushing, you say, and inbound is pulling. Outbound is usually a push strategy. So emails, newsletters, direct mail, phone calls, social media. It's actually making something happen. So you've got that as a principal option. Can't cover it in great detail today. But there's lots of places to look for sales opportunities. So I've listed them all here. Oh, not all of them, shouldn't say that. I've listed many of them here. How many of you actually look for tenders? Now, some of you will say, I don't do tenders, I don't want to do tenders. Well, you may not want to do them, and you're perfectly within your rights to do it. But one thing tenders show is who's spending money. And even if you can't bid for it, you may be able to subcontract a successful business. And you'll see where the opportunities are and where the money is being spent. So tenders is definitely one way. Gov.uk is a great site to go to and set up alerts and the like to find out what's actually happening. The biggest spender of money in this country is our government. It's a trickle-down effect. Also, to look on, set up Google alerts relating to your clients, relating to your prospects. Look on Google Trends to see where there are spikes in terms of online searching. Investigate what is happening within various Facebook groups and also within LinkedIn groups. There are plentiful discussions. Anyone who's joined the likes of the Yorkshire Mafia will know on LinkedIn with 20,000 members, anyone who's involved in business-to-business sales, well, that's a great place to go. And many people are involved in business-to-consumer sales. There's so many discussions taking place within Facebook groups that may be related to your community. And also this principle about local business support, this idea of the circular economy, people trading locally. Think about this, there's 7 places to go there where you may look for sales opportunities. But do you know where I think the best place to go for sales opportunities is? Where? I'm waiting on your word. You're waiting. Seek referrals. 90% of clients will actually provide a referral, but most people don't ask. So often, I would really encourage you to think about the best well in which to seek out. It's not a very good metaphor, is it? The best place to go to look for opportunities is actually to ask your clients for referrals or to get business from existing clients and to be proactive. We'll come back into the sales process a little bit later on. So here is 7 steps. I'm going to cover sales skills right through a 7-step process. So here you are in how to improve your sales skills: planning, opening, questioning, listening, presentation, objections, closing, and follow-up. And because our time is short today, I'm going to cover these quite quickly. First one, planning. Right. The world has been tipped upside down. The days of driving around building sites and things like that may not necessarily be the case. I've already given you examples where you can do face-to-face stuff. You see it every day in consumer situations. You've got the face-to-face, you've got the telephone, you've got email, you've got social media, and you've got Zoom or conferencing. You've got lots of different places, tools to use to reach customers. Now, you have to accept the fact that there's probably a combination thereof. So think about the most appropriate tools for actually reaching clients and to talk to them. The key thing often is to really embrace technology. If you have an e-commerce site or you've got your own website, a great place to go is to use the right technology to generate leads from traffic to your site. Up to this, if you've got a basket of goods, there's software you can get to look at people checking out. You can use retargeting ads, and also you can look at lead generation tools for your own website. Embracing technology as well as actually setting up things for Microsoft Teams, Zoom, etc., where we are this afternoon. Get yourself ready in that respect. The next thing in terms of planning, and a very simple tool, does everybody have a sales funnel? So if I said to you in your business, do you know how much business you're going to get next month or the following month or the following month after that? And you know, how much are you doing in terms of following up your quotations and looking at your opportunities and looking at your dormant customers, looking at people who haven't bought from you for a little while? So I would really encourage you to have a metric in your business that was a sales funnel or a sales pipeline. So you get a lead, becomes an opportunity, becomes a quotation, becomes a customer. Second thing I would really recommend you to have, if you haven't already, is to make sure you have some form of client and prospect database. Oh, some of you are saying, hang on a second, Simon, what about all that GDPR stuff? Well, yeah, you have a legitimate interest under the legislation to contact existing customers and people who've bought from you and to give them the option in which to unsubscribe from any communications. But I would strongly advise you to think about investing, if you haven't already, in a database. Or better still, look at a customer or client relationship management system. There's 3 on the screen, and I can't really recommend one over another, but I've used all 3. And all 3, to a lesser extent, are free or very low cost, depending on the usage and the number of users. You're investing in a system here that will help you manage the entire sales process. Insightly, HubSpot, Zoho. So the key thing with a CRM system is that they help you automate and follow up in terms of attracting, engaging, and delighting customers, strangers, and prospects, managing your entire process. So these can be easily integrated. So what these systems will do will help you follow up leads, tracking customer activity, generate leads, manage your SEO and your social media. You can write emails from them, and you can set up all sorts of analytics from one screen. Often with some clients, we set up a CRM system and we're following up opportunities. So we're making the calls out or doing the emails, but it's all tracked through one database that is visible and used by a number of different employees. It's a very low-cost way of actually making sure you've got your great system in place. So we haven't even talked about sales skills, we've talked about the foundations here. So please think carefully about databases, lead management systems, sales pipelines. Right, let's crack on. Sales skills. Let's talk about sales skills. Right, here's a scenario. You've got a customer who has sent you an inquiry, or you've got a client who hasn't bought from you for a while. I would strongly recommend you actually think about what you're going to say and to whom. You're going to make a telephone call or some form of proactive activity towards them. What are you going to say and to whom? Because here he is, Duke of Wellington. What's he doing there? Well, he said, wasn't it the most battles are won in the tent rather than on the field. It's the idea very much about what are you going to say. So here's a little tip to use. Think about this before you make any customer visit, whether that's in person or virtually. Think about these things. What is your principal objective of the meeting? And then your secondary objective. So your first objective may be to secure an order. Secondary objective maybe to get some referral. Whatever it is, think about what you're trying to do and what a secondary objective is. The next thing is to think about how you're actually going to open the meeting. So clearly everyone understands how long you've got to talk and what's going to be discussed. And there's no harm at all in sitting with a sheet of paper, as I would encourage you to do, and have some questions that you are going to ask. And to think ultimately the purpose of the meeting is to meet your principal objective or your secondary objective and to know what is going to happen next. You'll be amazed how many companies I go to in their sales office. Somebody is talking on the phone and they are answering their emails or on their own mobile phone, Facebook or wherever it is. I would really encourage people to be the pen and paper or to directly inputting into a screen. It's about staying focused and to have an objective. And going to a meeting, the key thing, if nothing else to have, the pen and paper and your meeting mapped out there in front of you. One tip here, you're going to think I'm slightly mad, and many of you have probably heard this. If you're going to make an important phone call to a customer, please, you're going to think I'm mad, stand up to make it. It's been well proven that when you're standing up, it's easy to breathe, you can be more assertive, you're more distraction free. You can wish to turn off all your distractions and actually stand up, make that call. You'll probably find it a little strange at first, but I guarantee it's a lot easier. There's nothing worse than talking to somebody and all you can hear in the background is ping, ping, ping on the computer. You haven't necessarily got your own, the customer's eyes, your full attention. There we go. And the next thing to have when you're actually talking to somebody in whatever way, shape or form is to have your toolkit next to you. Questions are asked, you can answer them. So whatever it is in your toolkit, I'll just put a few things up on the screen there that you may wish to have at your fingertips. That is about the planning process. What are you going to say? Who? Right, the next thing. We've gone to that. So the next thing is the opening. What are you going to say? Well, the power of the first impression. Well documented that you will make a decision about somebody or something within a matter of moments. We always used to make an impression on someone about the strength of their handshake or whatever. That situation is long gone, both because of where we are, but we make a decision about somebody within a very short space of time. On a website, it's normally 2 or 3 seconds, and in person, it's an equally short period of time, because this is very much about this issue, your personal brand. But when you make a phone call to somebody and they answer the phone, you're making a decision almost instantly about how that person answers the phone. Think really carefully about your own personal brand and how your initial impression comes across the client. Naturally, when you're meeting somebody, like I had my situation with my 2 gardening buddies, respectful in terms of social distancing. Here we are. How to have a good telephone voice. Well, let me give you a little tip on answering the phone or making a phone call out. You know what the biggest mistake people do normally? They talk too fast and they don't pause. Sounds a bit strange when someone's doing it, but next time you ring someone up, they would almost robotically answer the phone very quickly. They often say, well, who am I talking to? So if you actually if you're answering or making a call out, try this little tip to speak a little slowly and put some emphasis on your voice. So at least if nothing else, they remember your name. There we go. Phone answering. Make sure you're doing 3 rings. Smile, speak clearly, slow your voice, appropriately formal. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever. And a little tip as well. For those of you who receive calls on a voicemail, it's quite staggering how many people I ring up and I'm getting through to an EE or a Vodafone voicemail service. I have no idea sometimes. I'm often querying myself, think who I'm actually talking to. Think really carefully about actually changing your own voicemail, having 2 or 3 options. You may have an option for the weekend, you may have an option for the evening, you may have an option for COVID-19 or your holiday. But think carefully about changing your voicemail. It's very personalized. Now, some of you are thinking, what's this going on now? It is for those of you who are big enough and brave enough, which we all are really, to make calls out. P-E-A-R. Think of this as a structure for making an outbound or ringing up a client. The P is a personal introduction. The E is to establish you and your company's credentials. A, to awaken the customer's interest. And R is request permission to proceed. I have to do this because time is short very quickly, but I'll give you an example on the screen and you'll get this. You think about, good morning, my name is John Smith of ABC. So good morning, Mr. X, my name is John Smith. It's a personal introduction. So to express, ABC are a local supplier of X. You're awakening their interest. My reason for phoning is that we have, or a product or service that's been provided to similar organizations, and then you're requesting permission to continue. And you can adapt this for whatever, and this is a cold call to a client, but also if you're making calls out following up quotations or following up a customer query or whatever it is, think of it as PAIR, P-E-A-R, the personal introduction, expressing the interest, the awakening, and then seeking a result. I would strongly recommend not to have a script and to practice it. On a sheet of paper where you're making a call out that's got a clear structure, you know what you're going to say. You come across then as confident and assertive, and more likely rather than being apologetic. Again, it's rehearsing. And if you get the opportunity to try it out with friends or whatever it is, I think you become much more adept. And the key thing always is to build rapport. Now, how do you build rapport? Well, genuine, warm and friendly, in face-to-face, mirror language. But this really comes down to listening skills. So actually to build rapport with a client is absolutely critical. It's done face-to-face, over the phone, or to a lesser extent by email. But absolutely critical. Next step. We've got the planning, we've got the opening. Right, questions. What are you going to say? And the key skill there is very much when you're making your call to a customer face-to-face or wherever, is to plan those questions, open-ended questions, classics, what, how, where, when, why, open-ended questions. No, there's no harm in having them rehearsed or written down. The one thing, the greatest sales skill you can have is the art of listening. Nobody wants to go anywhere into a sales situation, customer service situation, and be talked at, bored. That is and the conversation in a sales situation, customer service situation, is exactly that. It's a conversation, and to learn, listen, and to write things down. One of the best tips I can ever give you is if you're having a conversation with somebody, you write it down and then you summarize. Thank you very much, Mr. X. We have talked about A, B, and C. We have agreed D, E, and F. Is that correct? Yes. So then you can lead on to a close. Natural thing. I don't know if anyone's got photographic memories on the call today, but I would strongly advise to write things down when you're talking to people. Next up on the list, present your product or service. Really simple stuff. Prepare, rehearse what you're doing, and then ultimately to ask for feedback. There are really only three ways people hear, people see, and people feel. Now, if you are presenting a product or service, often the best way of doing this is to appeal to people's senses. We know that 60% of people remember pictures over words. If you're thinking about what you are promoting, selling, marketing, to actually appeal to people's senses with a key thing. If you can get people to touch it, which is a taste type issue, whatever, if you're in note, got that type of product, alternately, you would like people to see and feel it. Next thing, do this quite quickly, objections. You have pre-prepared thoughts on how to overcome objections. Natural one is you are too expensive, X is cheaper, whatever it is. Are you prepared? Do you have an answer prepared for that? You've got to think about the atypical objections that you will get. Look at it this way. There's often, now we've moved into, in particular political world, debating, and they spend hours rehearsing. People spend hours rehearsing for answering questions on television. What are they doing? They're anticipating the answer and they're giving a question. And politicians do this all the time. You have to see it. They've got a piece of paper. They've got briefing notes. They're there. They're doing no different to what you're doing in sales. So-and-so asks A, I'm going to give answer B. Not again in a robotic manner, but to be absolutely prepared and ready for overcoming objections, which we all get. Objections ideally can be turned into opportunities, which we come on to. Finally, probably the most important part of the sales process, the sales skills, is asking for the order. Remember good old days, when we give the good old days here for lads only listening. Remember we went up to the girl at school or in the pub or in the nightclub or whatever, you'd be chatting to her. And what did you want to achieve at the end of it? You wanted to ask her out, you wanted to ask for a drink, and you regretted it deeply if you didn't because you haven't got the confidence to ask. Well, that is no different psychologically in the sales process. Same principles apply. You've done all the hard work, you've got in front of the customer. You've got to find a way of asking for the order. So please rehearse, be ready, ask for the order. Key thing when you're closing a sale is to make sure your prospect understands your offering. You tailor it to each person, you adapt their point of view, and if they say no, it doesn't always mean never. Think about that no. So be ready. And if it's no, it's just could be a buyer playing a game, who knows what, but make sure you're ready to ask that question. The one I use myself personally with clients is it's just a fairly gentle close. Would you like to go ahead with X, Y, and Z? When would you like me to start? That's assumptive, but it's slightly different. It's a closed question. I don't mind what the answer is, yes or no, but you want to get the answer. So think of the actual close. And the critical thing and the final piece of the puzzle in the 7 steps is following up. Because the thing is, when you actually have done a sale or whatever, it doesn't matter how the sale is done, if it's done online, offline, how it's done, follow it up and use those magic words, thank you. And then to actually even ring the person up and to give them another sale touch point. And it happens all the time. Add-on sales, additional sales, asking referrals. It's probably the thing that goes wrong the most in the sales process is that you may get an order, great, but you're looking for the lifetime value of the customer. It's seeking them, because in a perfect world, is for your customers to become advocates and referrers. So sales follow-up. That was a sales process in 20 minutes. I'm going to cover that in far more detail in sales training courses. I just want to spend the last 5 minutes of today's webinar or so going through some of the latest sales trends and to some of the issues that have cropped up in our new world. You've seen these phrases used all the time, and we've gone from the response phase, COVID-19, back in February to March. We're into a potential recovery phase, depending on what sector you're in, and now this magic phrase, the new normal. I think it's a well-chosen sort of journey path. So the world is different. And very much you need a strategy to overcome this. Face-to-face sales naturally are going to become more challenging, although the two instances of example today are illustrative of that. But it's going to go through some very quick sales trends that have come out of the pandemic. This is by a sales survey done in the US by McKinsey & Co, worth Googling. And it's probably no great surprise to you that spend in sectors has gone down, with some gone up in pharmaceuticals and PPE. Digital obviously is critical, and we've now moved towards remote sales. So, terrible busy slide. It's become quite obvious before COVID, those traditional sales interactions, 52 compared to 48 in digital, complete switch in a very short space of time. The traditional sales has slid down, I don't know words, has fallen, and that people are operating remotely and digitally. Not a great surprise. So a third and 2/3. Don't expect you to absorb all that, but what is really, this is for business to business sales. The key thing is that people are now moving towards self-service. You think about your technology, often the buyer is looking for everything to take place in a self-service mentality. So this is the idea that you're moving towards apps, AI, chatbots, and that people can interact with customers without even touching a human interface. You might wish to think really carefully about how you interact with people, that it may be done in a different way. And the future is both research, or evaluation, ordering, and done is without touching human hand. It is a growth market. You can see it's shifting dramatically in terms of 50-50 towards doing it silent and digitally. So, COVID-19 consideration, future of buying has radically changed. And that the idea is very much that you will work with customers in a collaborative way. They're not necessarily selling to somebody, they're looking for people to partner with them. You might really want to think about your messages. The days of the hard sell are probably a little bit behind us, and that your tone is different, the messaging is different, you're on a more educational slant, and it's more collaborative. And the idea in social media in particular, and more so in direct sales, is that you're sharing as opposed to selling. I think people have started to rebel against the idea, and that because we're going through such challenging times for many people, that you change your message more to an educational one, and that buyers are looking to partner with people because they actually, this idea about helping each other. And critically, mentioned earlier, so in the little fun Q&A we did at the start, brand is becoming so important about businesses' perception of brand. If you're shifting towards more online sales, more AI, and towards more self-service, and towards brands being educational, your brand and its brand identity and its values are more and more critical. You saw that at the start of the pandemic when the likes of Sports Direct tried to stay open and insist there were key workers there. And you saw it to a lesser extent with Virgin Airlines, who made their staff put them on unpaid holiday prior to furloughing. Two huge PR blunders, and may have sullied their brand, and you think about how you've perceived that brands that are helpful throughout this situation. So really think about your brand and your identity. And more business is won and lost and maintained with great customer service. If you can get anything right in terms of the way you deal and treat customers, is to do that, because majority of businesses actually begin with a poor customer service elsewhere. Consumers doing business and competitor shifting is often down to a poor customer experience. And if you come full circle, if you have a CRM system and you can see who's trading with you, who's not, and you're in regular contact with your customers, the whole customer experience does become integrated. Now, what's really changed, it's a bit like what we're doing now. Who would have foreseen we'd be sitting here doing this? You really have to embrace technology to do virtual conferences, virtual discussions. Your events may form webinars, video conferencing, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube. The whole principle about doing product or demonstrations, if you can't get in front of your customers, you have very little choice but to embrace technology in terms of outbound marketing. I mentioned about inbound marketing already because of the use of AI and the use of the websites, but embracing and mastering one of these technologies would be essential. Critically, I mentioned next trend is automation in marketing. It isn't as expensive or as difficult as you think to introduce the likes of robots, chatbots on your website. You actually are communicating with customers and you're automating a lot of your activity. It is possibly where many businesses are heading. Critically, a lot of the theories and thinking is very much, it's virtually so many businesses across every sector is all about customer retention. And that you would do 4 things to keep the sales engine running. You go to virtual selling, you do all you can to keep your existing customers, protect the base, you engage with them, and you absolutely prioritize your opportunities and you keep following them through. They are the trends to keep that sales engine running. And the best way of doing that is to keep communicating with your clients by whatever means. Ultimately, you would like your clients to become advocates for you. It is the cheapest, quickest, fastest, best method in which you can actually gain additional sales is for your customers to become your advocates. That applies in the consumer marketing and business-to-business marketing. And you only get to that point by giving people a great experience and asking and setting up referral systems or referral processes. And final thoughts, your sales skills. Think all about the customer. Think digitally and think value. Think about the value you're offering your client, the hidden value, differentiator from your competition. You're going to probably have to trade with them digitally, and your thoughts are all very much relating to how you do it. So think customer, think digital, think value is probably the direction in which we are heading. Next week we do a webinar every Tuesday, but we're not next week because I'm going to go to the seaside for 2 days. So we are going to be on a Thursday. Thursday afternoon, we're on Thursday next week, and what's it going to be about? We're going to be talking about marketing, and we're going to talk about how to market a startup. There we go. So that's next week's topic. You will find me there, info@clientmarketing.co.uk, and that's the Twitter handle. I'm now going to stop sharing. I'm going to go to the chat line and to see if anybody has any questions before I hang up today. And look, I've silenced everybody. Not one question. Does anybody have any questions before we close up today? Please say, Pauline, please say more about GDPR. Right. That's a topic. You can have a little drink first. Thank you. Cocktail hour. Very nice. Right, let's say more about GDPR. For those of you who don't know, GDPR came into play a little while ago. General Data Protection Regulations, I think, is a full title. The idea is that you will keep consumers' data safe and that you will not abuse the data by selling it on to someone else, and you'll protect the data, and it's protect the importance of their needs. So the idea about spamming people and sending out unwanted emails and the likes is not considered appropriate, or selling data. It came from the Cambridge Analytica Facebook kind of scenario. However, that said, it is there very much aimed at those large businesses. The principal aim of the Information Commissioner was to stop the trading of data. If you have, let's say, for example, 100 customers, there is absolutely no harm in contacting those 100 customers. You have what is known in legislation as a legitimate interest to do so. If you are sending out an email campaign to 100 prospects, that is perfectly acceptable as well if you have a legitimate interest to do so, providing you give them the option to unsubscribe. So GDPR is quite critical in terms of holding data, hosting data, but it's not there to stop people from trading. If you want to look it all up, look at the Information Commissioner and the regulations. So hopefully, Pauline, I've answered that one. Great question here from Jane. Do you have any advice for building confidence to sell when you're an introverted personality? That is a fantastic question. I'm going to try and answer as best I can. I did joke earlier about actually making the call out to a customer, to seeing somebody, and it's taking that leap. That business that went into the marketplace, their face visors, and talk to people coldly, put it that way. Think of it this way. If you are practiced and you've rehearsed and even role played amongst yourselves, it's a great thing to do. If you're professional and you smile, people will give you the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of people will quite happy that first, if you can get those first impressions right, I think human nature that people will give you a chance. But nobody likes a hard sell. And the biggest difficulty, I think, is, Jane, everyone else, it's the confidence of taking rejection. It's something that is in there, and the only way to do it is to trial and error. To go back to how I began an hour ago, I remember going to building sites. I can't swear, but you can imagine what I was told when I went on some building sites. 2 words, second one's off. And I had, I built up a certain degree of immunity to that because it wasn't personal. But what I did to overcome that was that I dressed down. I dressed like a builder. I wasn't wearing a suit. I was mirroring the client. And that's often a way, I think, of overcoming that one, is to mirror behavior and be gentle in your opening. You cannot beat a smile. Right, that's 2 minutes there. I hope that's helped. Now, on that point, if anyone, I said under the whole program, there is one-to-one support. But if people have particular help they need with their sales or their marketing, we can organize that for you. So you've got particular sales issues and sales questions, we can do that. So hopefully that's answered your question. I know it's a hard question to answer in 2 or 3 minutes, Jane, but hopefully we've got to that point. Is there any further questions? Thank you for Ray, thank you for Pauline. Any other questions? Don't know if there is. One new message. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome. So just to conclude, I want to say thank you for everybody for being here today. hopefully it's a very big subject in a short space of time, and we're going to revisit sales in bite-sized chunks. So we're back on next week to talk about how to market a startup business. I'll send you the slides, send you details of any one-to-one support, and send you the links through email. I'm going to hang around for 5 minutes, and if anyone has any questions, but if not, I'm going to bid you a good afternoon. Thank you, and hopefully you've taken away a few thoughts that may be beneficial for you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.